Now, we have Kaiyu here today, also daughter of the late activist Tiger Bayles, who did magnificent work with his time on this physical plane. So Kaiyu, welcome.
Yeah, okay, that's short enough for me, not high enough. Just short enough. Yura, I've come from Minjirrabah today, North Stradbroke Island, most of you know. You got some Redlanders here. I grew up in Redfern, New South Wales. I'm Wanarua, Birrigubba, Wirri, Willy, and Gungaloo woman. Lot of bloodlines, all the way up from Whitsundays down to Newcastle way. But we live on tribal land on North Stradbroke Island. I live off grid. And Yarraka, if you remember back in the early days when I was helping Yarraka write the speeches and stuff to make sure our voices in this, our family was heard in this circle, important circle of truthers. Yarraka would have maybe emphasised the fact that there's about 40 of us unvaxxed, black fellas, and in our family alone, and that's all thanks to the deadly Dr. Archie Kalakarinos, which many of you will know after the pandemic, yeah? So Dr. Archie Kalakarinos saved lots of babies in Northern Territory in the 80s because when the mandate, they were forced to be vaccinating back in the 80s, every second baby was dying, Aboriginal baby of course, and Dr. Archie Kalakarinos found the problem, fixed it, reported, he was laughed at, and now he's revered, you know, he's well known now. But anyways, I'd like to pay my respects to the original owners of the land, the Yagara, the Turrbal, and the Yagara people, and also would like to extend my welcome or acknowledgement to all the elders, past, present, and future that are here with us today. Believe it or not, I've been campaigning against constitutional change now for 11 years. That's how long this has been going. This is just the latest one. It's exactly the same as Recognise. You've gathered that. The campaign that was canned, the big ARCON, it's the same. All they've done is given us the government has picked 250 people and then given us a voice with no legislative power. That's all that's changed from the old Recognise campaign to now. And I can tell you that they racked up about $1 billion in spending for the Recognise campaign, and it was all about achieving constitutional change, exactly what the voice is about. So what we need to understand is this is the very same game. This is just a new name. This is about the 6th attempt to try and get us into the Constitution. There was UME Unity, the Referendum Council, the Statement from the Heart, the Uluru Statement. This has been a long-winded game. 11 years we've been campaigning about it. We've been campaigning to stop it. And you can find lots of information on the Vote No to Constitutional Change page on Facebook. Unfortunately, that's the only place that we're visible. But in there, you can find anything you want as a search bar. You go in there and you've all the research on any topic, whether you want to look at the word recognise, which I'm going to go into soon. So one of the first things to understand with this one, I suppose, just to give you a little bit of scope, this is not the only thing we focus on. Our parents and grandparents and their brothers and sisters have been on the front line of our struggles for land rights, self-determination, human rights, children's rights, women's rights since the 70s. So this is just us these are our next lot coming through, the next younger ones. We are the Watson and Bayles families. So Maureen Watson was my grandmother, Tiger Bayles is my dad, as Tricky said. So the main thing to remember, I think, with this one is we're not aligned with Warren or Jacinta. We are the original grassroots Vote No. So Jacinta Price and Warren Mundine, different camp. I want to make that very clear straight up. In a nutshell, it's about gaining the consent of the tribes. So Governor Phillips' instructions was again the consent of the natives upon settlement invasion, yeah? It hasn't happened. They failed with terra nullius, which is another loophole that they could have taken to try and settle, to occupy legitimately, lawfully. And this, instead of having a truth and conciliation arbitration process, they're trying to trick us. Not just black fellas and white fellas. They're trying to say we're going to recognise you in the Constitution. Once we're in the Constitution, we don't got any more rights than anyone here. We can't protect our land. We can't protect our resources. We're just Australian citizens. But what does that break down to? British subjects. That's not right. We are the oldest people on earth. And they want to recognise us as British subjects. So I don't want to alert everyone to this fraud. That's only the beginning of the fraud. There's many, many frauds in this. Unless that treaty, for example, is written in our original dialects, it's going to be a fraud anyway. Because they could be telling us it means one thing, but it really means another. Only way I can scrutinise that document and know 100% that that's what's going to happen in the treaty is if it's in my dialect, eh? That's how they get away with it. In all these countries, there's not one treaty that has been upheld, not internationally either. Let's keep that in mind. So when the trickery and the traps, the deceit, the deception that's being used, most of you won't understand the levels of it to try and get your people up to par to understand the words and stuff even. So recognise, for example, comes, if you look in the Black's Laws Dictionary, it comes under recognisance. That's an actual contract between slave and slave owner to hand over all of your properties. And it gets worse in the Deep South, in America, USA, back in the Deep South days, they used to brand them with a hot R. And it's actually the Regina or whatever that's synonymous with the crown and the queen, the R, Regina, yeah, Rosaline or something, yep. So they were all stamped to say that they'd entered into a recognisance, a binding contract with their slave master. They relinquished all of their rights, all of their chattels, yeah. Reconciliation, another accounting term. It can be looked at as accounting, to merge the debt, to wipe the debt. Sounds like a really cool name. When you come back to Reconciliation Australia and the Reconciliation Council, it was set up by Mark Liebler, without any, except the godfather of reconciliation, Pat Dodson, without any Aboriginal consent, involvement, or consultation. Reconciliation's main agenda, when you all do your due diligence, which I'm sure you will, hopefully, so we can spread this like wildfire. Reconciliation Australia's main agenda has been to recognise us in the Constitution. So it's all about constitutional reform. There's a man by the name of Mark Liebler, and he's also the chair of the Australian Zionist Association, and he was also instrumental in the usurpation or the ceding of sovereignty in Palestine. So this guy's a bit of a mastermind, and he's been doing this since 2001. So Reconciliation Australia is the parent company, basically, who's behind all of these moves. They spent about $1.2 billion to recognise us, probably up to about $500 million now in this new one to recognise us again under the new name of The Voice. Our family, and we're encouraging all Australians to rebut in any legal instrument avenue you can, rebut this whole process, the voice, the treaty, the truth, and the referendum. A lot of people around the country, especially back home in Minjerribah, where I come from, we've put out declarations of rebuttals, and we're encouraging everyone to do that, whether it's a piece of paper or a video, that just says, on behalf of me and my family, this such and such a family, we do not agree, we object, or you rebut the whole idea of it legally. You're not gonna stand for it. We're very active on Facebook. You can get us on. I'm actually running the boycott the referendum page. I do encourage those who vote to vote no. I don't vote, so I've got to create a little platform for us people who don't vote. And that's the boycott the referendum. I've got a group on Facebook if you want to connect after this and ask any questions. One thing that I think people might miss out on, I'm just going to, Tricky touched on a little bit, is that the Crown's claim are all fraud, yeah? So the Crown doesn't own any land. If you actually have a look at the international laws and you have a look at what the experts are saying, so the experts all around the country are weighing in now, and this is great because it's the first time this year in 11 years I've finally got the proof from professors in law to say that when they say, sovereignty is a spiritual notion, or they're saying that the old Aboriginal law is nothing more than religious ideas and stories, or art, actually, all of the monuments are just religious art. No, they're actually part of the oldest law system that's supposed to be the supreme law in this country, because you can't have two laws in operation at one time. Oldest in law is best in law. Our first in law is best in law. So our family standing is that constitution is invalid because it's a British Act of Parliament, and it's also been amended without going through the right processes. So it's illegitimate. Why would you want to be, if you was the tribes, why would you want to be included in an illegitimate document? It's an act of British Parliament. It's time to grow up, become independent, become Australians proper. We don't want a part of this fiction. This is all legal fiction. And I'm sure if we all got sat down and said, look, all this is we're going to skull drag the tribes under the jurisdiction of the Crown for the first time since the boats come. They're going to be called Australians now. We can go get their land. We can take everything. We don't even need to get a ticker box. No tick and flick no more. They're gone. We dealt with them. No. That's what we're looking at, And for all Australians, we're looking at, I'll say it here and now, a corporate takeover. Look at the main sponsors, BHP, Billiton, that Reinhardt woman, they're all in there, Twiggy Forrest, they're all the main supporters, billions, and I've got pages and pages of the research on who's sponsoring these fellas. We haven't consented to this, you mob, and I do really feel for you, all of Australians, because you have the burden of voting on something that doesn't affect you. It affects your black brothers and sisters in this country who you want to respect, and people are being misled by thinking to vote yes, that's going to help black fellas. There's a bit of trickery, a lot of trickery going on, and I really do. I feel for you all to be put in that situation where you have to make such a big decision. It's going to affect our children and their children into the future, and I think what we need to all understand is we haven't consented to this, and that's the number one thing that needs to be echoed through the whole country and through the international law community. Indigenous people, the tribes, have not consented to this. We have had a farce of consultation processes happening throughout the country. Selected people were allowed in. Some of our people who wanted to do the smoking ceremony were arrested, and elders that are no longer here with us today. It was not a consultation process. It was complete trickery. Only the people that were selected and have vested interest, like land council representatives, they were allowed to speak. And you'll hear Megan Davis, who was she's the big boss of the executive chair, they call it executive board or something, that makes all the decisions on the Uluru Statement and stuff. She got up in the front of Australian press conference, the press club, and said nobody was allowed in, no agitators, nobody who disagreed. She says it openly. You can see it on our pages. And there was no lawyers allowed in except for me, she says. And Malcolm Turnbull, nobody knows he's a lawyer too. But he was allowed in the room, and all the time through these dialogues, they were running back into the back room to ask this Mark Liebler, who set up Reconciliation Australia, are they getting it right yet? And did you all notice they signed a blank document? That's another fraud. So this is based on fraud. It doesn't have our consent. And I think, lastly, I want to bring your attention to the IHR pandemic treaty. Is aware of that yet? Well, I was trying to warn everyone. I've seen similarities with our test. They were using the IHR regulations in our community as testing grounds. And I was trying to say, come on, we need to stop this, before they got to the Health Assembly in November. Now we've got 18 months. There's a petition going around to try and withdraw our signature. So there's 165 signatures all signed up to the IHR or pandemic treaty, and that gives the UN legally binding rights. That's going to give them, when they want to do a lockdown, they're going to do it from that One World Government office there. Australia signed up to it thanks to the past Prime Minister before this idiot. And we're all trying to get off it, because what that's again means, it's just it's a free-for-all for the resources again, lock us off all the best bits, keep us in the 15-minute smart cities and, lock us all out. And this is, ceding our sovereignty is going to make it way easier for them to achieve the global thing, yeah? The tribes are probably our only protection, so stand with us.
Thank you, Sister Kaiyu.